It is 7 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we will go ahead and do roll call, and we can just do it up here at the table.
Sarah Darding.
Christy Van Meter.
Lauren Pace Miller.
Sheila Magers.
Sarah Sanders.
Rocky Business.
Buck Ruder.
Kristen Fisher.
Okay, thank you. I would like to move on to the approvals. Can we have an approval of the agenda?
Second.
Motion by Christy, second by Rocky. All in favor? 6-0. Oh, any opposed? I guess no, if everybody was yes. Okay, moving on to the minutes for the April 20th, 2026 regular meeting. Any discussion? If not, I would accept a motion. Motion by Sarah,
Second.
second by Buck. All in favor? 6-0. Okay. We will move on now to communications, the bond project updates. Tucker.
Go to the agenda. So we're going to do a pretty brief update tonight. The meat of while we're here tonight. Oh, is it close? Is it just not close enough? It's green. We're going to do a quick progress update, but the majority of what we're here to do tonight is to ask for approval of the site utilities relocation package that we've been planning for the last 6 months. We'll talk about that and then just some brief next steps. So if we'll go to the next one, we've been putting this slide in front of you guys for the last, since we started these updates, and I'm highlighted green where we've moved to. So construction documents, we've done all of the facility committee reviews of the design, what's design development, which is kind of like halfway through design on all of our projects at middle school, high school, and Barryton. And they're moving into what's called construction documents, and what that means is they've gotten down to, do you want a tack board on this wall or a marker board on that wall? You know, where do you want your teaching wall? You know, all the different types of cubbies and cabinet selections that there are. So all of those staff were a part of the review of debating what kind of fit and finish goes into each room. And so now they're just going to go execute those drawings and start being prepared to have that bid out by Kendall Construction for what's called a guaranteed maximum price for that scope of work. Utility relocations packages, we talked about having 6 packages, and what that means is you've got a contract in place with Kendall that had a contract for pre-construction services, which is what they're doing as far as a dollar amount, and then that contract is amended with these amendments that you're going to see. So you're going to have 6, and we've talked about a potential 7th amendment that you don't see up there that would be for potential parking lot work this summer. We're going to go get bids for it and see how they come in, but with what's going on with oil prices, and we've got some feedback from the designers that said we're going to need more subgrade prep than what we initially had thought we might need, but there's no reason to fix those parking lots without doing it right, because we don't want you back in this situation again. So tonight we're talking about the utility relocations and what that is, and Jake with Kendall is here, and he's going to come up when it's time for the action item and talk through specifically the details behind that. I believe you guys have got the amendment and some of the estimate breakdowns for what's a part of that amendment. But what that is essentially in lieu of that price being put in the amendment for the middle school and high school and Barryton, we are pulling that scope out of that process and going specifically for site utilities so that we can relocate those this summer, so that we're not providing additional disruption. Obviously, like being able to get around the high school is important. Being able to have the stuff that has to happen in front of the middle school is important to get it out of the way. And then also at Barryton to just get prepped up, because that's going to be the first one to start. So that's what we're asking for tonight. The next one would be the gym pre-engineered metal building package. That's what PEMB stands for, and that's basically just ordering those structures because they're a fabricated structure that has a long lead time on them. And so we want to get those ordered so that it shows up in time for when it's ready during construction. We talked about doing an overall cost check-in in April. I kind of alluded to that with the design development. We've been through that, and it was a positive experience. Right now, we're right on budget with the exception of a placeholder for the field house. So the field house had an original budget based on the bond. Some of the requests that have been gone through have pushed that to be a little bit larger. And we wanted to, as a group, the facility committee and everybody on the staff said, hey, let's go ahead and focus on the educational components and make sure that we get those, especially with what's going on in the global markets right now. And we'll wait and see what we can actually get at that field house. So the cost check-in went well. Drawings are moving along as anticipated. We've been pushing them pretty hard, and so there's a little bit more work to do on the mechanical and electrical work at the middle school, but I think everything is moving along as hoped. And so construction timelines, utility relocations at all sites, we've talked about that quite a bit, and then all of this is gearing up for what starts in the summer or in the fall. Next slide is design. So facility committee, they've been doing the design development. We talked about that. Currently on budget, we talked about that. And then the next thing we talked about is the parking lots or the gymnasium. So either we will come back to you with a parking lot request next, or we will come back to you with the gym PEMB's request next, depending on how the pricing goes in. And so we'll review that with the facility committee and update you guys accordingly next month on how that goes. There's also a lot of other approvals and execution of work that we're working on, how to make sure that we're identifying all of that and getting it to you guys in a timely manner so that we don't miss something from an approval standpoint. And so we're probably going to come back to you in a couple of weeks and talk a little bit about what that could look like and what we think might fit for your specific project. So that's kind of what's going on. There's going to be a lot to spend. So about $6 million of your $65 million, about 59 of it goes to a contractor and an architect who then they pay their people. About $6 million of it is going to go to a significant amount of other additional vendors, and there's going to be a whole lot more vendors for that $6 million. And so making sure that we're efficient with how we go through that work. There's going to be a couple options that we'll present you guys with. But so just kind of give you a little bit of teaser about presentation on that next week or in 2 weeks. So with that, if there's any questions, I know that Jake will walk through some of the specifics of the site utility package, but that's all we've got for tonight. The drawings have been continuing to develop, and we talked a little bit about the detail. Like we're getting into specifics about like, hey, we thought we wanted to put this teacher in this classroom and this teacher in this classroom, but they had more conversations about it and said, no, we'd like this layout better. It didn't change the drawings. It's just more refining specifically how each space is going to function.
Quick question. So can you go over just high level again, like what the construction plan is for the summer? You know,
Yep.
We're doing the playgrounds and the HVAC. And
Yep. So we've been having pretty consistent meetings with the HVAC company, with McElroy's, and Whitney has taken the detailed schedules from both Spearscapes and Miracle and merged those into one master schedule, and then been having meetings with them on making sure, because I know it's supposed to start next week. We worked things out with Barryton to get started on one of the playgrounds early. And then the HVAC is right on track. We got everything approved and all their submittals are through, and so that'll start. So what you'll see this summer is playgrounds, HVAC, and utility relocations.
Any other questions? Kristen?
Quick one. I know that they've been working to lay all those fiber lines all over the district to connect buildings, all those kinds of things. I assume that we had enough foresight to not put those in and then need to move them this summer?
We've been talking about that
Okay.
about about once a week.
I was sure
because,
you were on it. But
Yeah, we've been marking up where not to put it in, where we can put it in based on the work that we're doing, so we don't do anything twice.
And I see it in your miscellaneous items, but the road connection study, I assume that's for the road out to 45th?
Yep.
And do we have any update on that at all? I know that I'm getting ahead of you, but
We've met with the county, and they've given us the traffic study, and we've reviewed options for connecting to 45th and what that does to us on site. And so they've kind of given us some options, but because it's not the most important thing for us to get done on time, we've been focusing on the middle school addition because the 6th grade move is the most important factor.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to status of the district. Sorry, let me flip over to that. Oh. Okay, we will do the district admin, starting with Sarah. Are you the first one? Okay. I guess I should have done Mr. Hirsch first, sorry. You could be second. Ladies first tonight.
So in the business office, we have 5 items for you guys, just 5 primary items to review with you tonight. The first is a recap of some information that was provided to you in Friday notes the past couple of weeks. One is the Q migration. So the primary takeaway from that is the go-live date's been moved out to October 1st, and our training starts in February. So that's a big takeaway for Q migration. And the second item provided to you was the Capers audit. Trying to remember. Okay. So Capers audit is complete. It's fully resolved. We had some minor arrearages that were settled of less than $2,000, but everything's done on the Capers audit. Someone asked about Barryton roof repairs, and so I pulled some data. The district's paid to date so far $1,084,256, and that's specifically from the claim for the April 2025 storms. So as a result of those storms, we did submit a claim to the insurance company, and they covered all but $50,000, which was our wind and hail deductible. So if you have questions about the actual project, you can ask Micah that when he comes up. On tonight's claims, there was, I think, a roughly $88,000 payment. That was the last payment on that project. So, okay. Third item for you is a look at enrollment and FTE audit by the Kansas State Department on Education. So KSDE conducts an annual audit of each school district's current year enrollment and attendance, as well as some prior year expenditure data, and they do this every year. The enrollment and attendance data is initially collected through the district's student information system, which for Shawnee Heights is Power School. And then that data is transmitted to the state via the Kansas Individual Data on Student System, which is also known as the KIDS system. This data is used to determine the district's funding. The enrollment audit verifies that the district qualifies for the number of students being reported, as well as the associated weightings being applied to those students. And as a result, enrollment and weightings directly influence the district's annual budget and funding levels, as we reported to you in September of last year. The audit process typically concludes between early and late spring for us. It used to be in the winter, but it's gotten later and later each year. This year, we officially closed the audit in early April. So the district's not yet received our final audited legal max report. That report will determine what our finalized budget is, and it could slightly vary, but the audit itself has been completed. As we anticipated at the beginning of the school year, the district's audited enrollment for 25-26 does show a slight increase. Headcount has risen by 12 students from 3,643 in 24-25 to 3,655 in the current year. At the same time, weightings in current career and technical education, virtual education, and at-risk primarily have decreased slightly. And as a result, the district's FTE, so the full-time equivalent student counts, is expected to remain essentially flat for the coming year. So that is a summary of the district's audit, which leads me to financial projections. So we continue to closely monitor our financial position, but we don't anticipate any concerns regarding budget authority, which means what you published last year in September, we can live within that budget. As the fiscal year progresses, we will continue to focus on prudent management of expenditures, obviously, to maintain adequate cash balances that becomes what we focus on this time of year. This approach helps us to address any unplanned costs that we might experience or may arise within certain funds, and then ensures sufficient liquidity going into the new school year until we receive 26-27 state aid in other areas such as SPED, which we typically don't get our first round of state aid in that fund until October. At mid-year, which I reported to you, I think it was in December, the district conducts a comprehensive review of expenditures to ensure compliance with both minimum spending requirements, because we have to spend a minimum amount based on the FTE in a fund or the amount of dollars that were given to us in a fund through the general fund, and then also our legal maximum budget authority, which is what we publish. The legal max is calculated based on the greater of the current or prior year enrollment. It's adjusted for current year weightings, but it is limited to the amount that we publish. That is our certified budget. Should the calculated legal max exceed the published budget, republication would be required. But right now, we don't anticipate needing to do that. Based on current projections, total expenditures are expected to remain below the district's legal budget authority, and we're positioned to implement our standard year-end adjustments and transfers to ensure compliance with budgetary restrictions and limitations. So, as is typical, individual accounts may vary. Some expenditures come in under budget, some slightly exceed projections, but overall, expenditures are expected to fall within an anticipated range, and we continue to monitor that closely as the year winds down. The business office team will continue to monitor all that activity closely through the final quarter, and we'll address any areas of concern that may arise with the administration in the central office. Fifth item, and last item for you is our fiscal year-end preparation. So our mid-year projections that we continue to fine-tune as the year winds down, that is one aspect of preparing for closing the fiscal year, but there are other things that we do. After our initial mid-year financial review, we begin to carry out additional steps such as reviewing contracts. You've seen a lot of contracts come before you. We renew a lot of them annually, but some are multi-year agreements, so you may not see everything every year. We check accounting accuracy. We look at like long-standing liabilities. When we process payroll, we generate some payroll liabilities, and sometimes the actual invoice that comes in is a little lower or a little higher, so balances remain there, so we check those to close them out. We finalize our capital plan purchases for the year. We refine spending forecasts, update asset records after the physical inventory has been finalized, which just started May 1st. We review tax collections, manage accounts payable, old purchase orders, get them closed out, complete payroll adjustments, and monitor cash flow. And that's not everything, but those are the big ones. We are starting April financial reports now. We aim to finalize our final expenditure forecast somewhere by the end of the month or the 1st of June. Do you have any questions for me?
Sorry, can I ask a newbie question?
Sure.
Does state aid, does that come in like in one chunk at the beginning of the, or the middle of the year, or does it come in?
No, we do get some state aid in June, not for every fund, but it comes in periodically all throughout the year. No, we don't get all of it at one time.
Okay, and then like the tax collections for our local area, does that just come in as people pay? Then do they forward that on to us, or how does that come in?
We get back taxes kind of trickles in all throughout the year, but we get primary payments in January and then in June.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Starding? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hirsch.
Want to give you an update on where we're at on teacher hiring. We are at a point now, we've got 4 teachers yet to hire, which is a good place for us right now. Fairly normal hiring year for teachers, I would say, but just 4 left to go. Teachers have until, by statute, I believe it's the second week after the 3rd Friday in May to tell us. Kind of an arbitrary day, but that is May 29th this year. So by May 29th, teachers have to let us know if they're going to be leaving by the continuing contract law. If they don't tell us by then our negotiated agreement has penalties that we can start putting in place for them to leave. We do have a pile of classified openings, paras, bus drivers, custodians. That's very normal this time of year. We tend to hold off on some of those, especially paras, waiting to see what our counts are for the next year, making sure we don't hire too many, and we know where we want them at, things like that. So those will be coming. Spent the day working with our work comp provider. Workers' comp likes to do a yearly tour of our buildings. The purpose of that is they will walk through, look for risk areas that could possibly cause employee injuries. It could be in the food service kitchens. It could be in a classroom with carpets that aren't safe, or furniture that's not safe, or variety of different things. The goal there is they will come back and give us recommendations on ways to improve some of the safety of the buildings. That helps us twofold. One, if we don't have as many injuries, our work comp claims go down, so our insurance prices go down, our claims go down. But it also increases the number of days your employees are working, which is pretty important in a school to have your employees there when you're there. So I've been working through that. We do that yearly. It's a good process for us. Lastly, something that's been encompassing most of my semester, this is working on this HR transition. I will work with Scott Dial. We'll have a week here at the end of May where we get together and start working through some of that transition. He's fairly familiar with the spot because he's done it before, but we'll do some more of that. We've also created for him a full year calendar of events that I do, and in those calendars, Lisa Davina, my assistant, and I are making directions and sample stuff, and so he can follow. So it'll be a pretty smooth transition for him, hopefully, and if not, he knows my phone number. So any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Hirsch? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. O'Brien.
Good evening. The world of special education over the last several months. First of all, on Wednesday of last week, we had Unified Field Day. Great day, started out a little chilly, but warmed up, and it was just a wonderful morning. We had 65 participants, and we had 11 middle school Stuco members and 4 high school junior Civitan members assist with the games and playing with the kids. And it was just a lot of fun to see the kids playing and having a great time. We had all kinds of games, anything from soccer to trying to think, Jenga, so that they were using their fine motor skills, all kinds of different things. Tricycles that were adapted, so those were great. So it was just a lot of fun, and we had a lot of staff out there, and I think they were having as much fun as the kids were. So they also had Kona Ice around the end of field day that morning, and then they got to take a snack home or back to the school with them. So I want to thank the committee members. It's led by Brian Unruh. Other committee members are Lexi Unruh, Kat Taggart, Brooke Baker, Sophia Rilko, Mona Spring, and Amy Meyer. And they just work all year long to get this together, getting donations, et cetera. So, and getting the referrals and ordering the shirts, and it's a lot of work, and they do a great job. Also, on the last PD day, which I believe was the 20th, does that sound right? We had a large number of paras. Most paras in the district participated in 8 hours of online training through MANT, which is our program that we train our folks in forming relationships, de-escalation strategies, and if we need to do any physical holds or something like that for students. So they spent 8 hours doing the initial training, and again, that's on de-escalation and forming relationships. So that was great, and it was a wonderful way to use that time, and we've had lots of requests even from teachers to do that with their entire staff. So we will see what that looks like, but good use of time. Also, categorical aid was due last week, which is a state report and helps give us a basis for our funding. The mental health intervention team, grant was due last week, and that is, for those of you that don't know, that's a grant through the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and it helps provide us with 2 social workers. We hire 2 social workers, and it helps fund those. It doesn't fund them completely, but they serve as liaisons to our local mental health, community mental health services, and that's Family Service and Guidance Center, but now ASTRA. And they form as liaisons to those clinics and then help hook up students with services as well as monitor those students. Then we have services actually brought to them. So those are for kids that typically have difficulty getting to the clinic for their services, and so we bring them to them. And they come a couple times a month, and they also have a parent support worker and a case manager. So it's a really good grant. They did reduce that this year. The legislature did reduce the funding for that grant. So we're going to see, we went ahead and applied, and we will see what funding we are allocated, and then we'll determine what we can do in terms of staffing and that kind of thing. Another benefit of the grant is these kiddos don't have to leave school for their services. So they don't miss class. Some of them would leave in the morning. We wouldn't see them back all day. So it's a really good grant, and we got that application done. And last thing, I think Matt referred to enrollment and staffing. So we're starting to look at what our enrollment numbers are at each of the buildings so that we can determine capacity and staffing. So that was quickly special education in the last little bit here. Do you have any questions for me?
Anyone with
All right.
questions? I have one.
Yes.
It's maybe a 2-parter, though. On the para in-service, even though it was online, were they all together, or did they do it at their
So
respective locations?
Different schools did it differently, and it was kind of based on knowing their paras and how they work best. So some of them did them all together, some of them were in separate classrooms. It just kind of depended on what they felt like their staff would do better with. So, but they were at their buildings. I mean, they divided them up that way, so they weren't all in one place.
Okay. And remind me, because I think we've talked about this before, but I can't remember. Do the paras participate in just a few of the in-service days throughout the year? Okay.
Just a couple, what is it, 3?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? All right,
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. O'Brien. All right. Next up, we have Mrs. Hummer, followed by Ms. Bell.
Good evening. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I only have 2 items tonight. The first one was about April 20th. We had a district collaboration in the afternoon, and our focus was really at the grade levels, making some minor tweaks or changes to our ELA and our math summary reports. If you remember, we revised the elementary summary reports, and so teachers have really been focusing this year on entering assignments into Power Teacher Pro, which then feeds by standards directly into the summary reports that you receive each quarter if you have an elementary student. So there has had to be a one-to-one match with those standards in order for them to feed, and it's been a learning curve for all of us because it's been different than what has been done in the past. And so this year we've really focused on the expectation of teachers entering at least 2 grades a week and really refining that skill and how to do that and to see the success. But you don't get things perfect the first time around. So there were a couple of revisions that grade level teachers wanted us to make. So we'll make those over the summer because you don't change a template like the summary report in the middle of the year. So we did that on April in CT time. And then next year, our focus will really be on providing opportunities for families at the elementary level to gather and gain more information and learn more about how to engage with Power School at the elementary level, how to be able to see the grades that are being put in and assignments that students are doing, not just each quarter when the summary report comes home. So we just wanted to share with you that it's been a process, and our focus this year has really been on teachers and helping us learn how to do that, and then we'll focus on our parents and engaging them in Power School next year as we move forward. And then the last item that I had is good news. We were notified that we were awarded the Early Childhood Block Grant for the 26-27 school year. So we will receive $188,268 so we can continue to provide and extend our at-risk pre-K services for our students and for our staff and for our families. So this is the 4th year, where I'm pretty proud of that, the 4th year of receiving this grant, and it is competitive. So it's a great thing for our district, and I just look forward to continuing our work with early childhood. So, questions or clarifications needed?
Who does that grant come from? Where does that?
It's the Kansas Children's Cabinet. If you really dig deep, the money that is raised or earned from taxes on tobacco products, they're pumping into the early childhood status, like group, in order to use that in a positive way.
Congratulations on that success
Thank
of getting
you.
that
Thank
again.
you.
I know that
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And our teachers are doing great things and continuing to learn along the way. So,
yes. Well, congrats.
thanks.
All right, Ms. Bell. Thank you, Mrs. Hummer.
Good evening. I wanted to start today by telling you that we completed our state assessment window, with the exception of a few kids that are doing virtual testing during the virtual window that's happening currently. But I wanted to give you just a little sense of how much under Teacher Appreciation Week goes into these assessments. Just for the math, ELA, and science tests, there were 9,800 test sessions for each, if you add up all the kids for math, ELA, and science. That means that there was 9,008 logins. I need to take a test, I need to get out. I need to take a test to get out, all across the district. Our dynamic learning map, DLM testing, that is for our significant kids, the kids that have the most trouble. Maybe they're not they can't communicate. They still have to take a state assessment as well. And they just in the spring, I didn't include the fall, but the spring had 277 test sessions. And our KELPA students had 352 test sessions. So a combined 9,637 test sessions happened here in the spring. And none of that happens without teachers in K-12, all the way for all the KELPA. The state assessment is 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th, and 11th grade. And our DLMs are for those same grades for those kids. So I just have to thank the people that really make all of that work, including all of our classroom teachers. There's usually paras in all those classrooms also helping proctor those tests. Our instructional coaches do a phenomenal job of making sure that they're supporting teachers to know how to troubleshoot, to know how to set up testing, whatever they need to do. Our administrators have to go in and monitor those and troubleshoot as well. And then our IT staff, every one of the IT staff in the building are there available for our teachers that need help. If we have an internet blip, they're right on it. And none of that happens without all of them working together. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone kind of had a global sense of the amount of work that has to go in just to get the test given, let alone then getting the results back and diving into that data and the conversations that happen from that, but just the actual administration. The second thing, as you are not surprised about, is that we've been working on curriculum maps. And so again, tonight, we'll be bringing you back some more. We'll be bringing you science, and that will include all but 4 of the science maps. We'll have 4 that we'll bring the next time. But that included quite a few maps as well, so 23 tonight. And then I met with Jody Medina and Shannon O'Connor, who are the instructional coaches, to come up with a game plan for the remaining ones. Now, several times ago, Rocky asked how many maps are we going to end up with, and I was guessing 400, and we'll be just a little short of that, but not by much. So we have a game plan for all of the remaining maps and split those out into the next 2 school years. So we'll be done and ready to recycle and start all over again. So I'm so excited for you. Carl Perkins grant, I can't tell you that we got $188,000, but we did get a $29,000 allocation for Carl Perkins, and that's specifically for resources that go into classrooms. So maybe a new welding machine or specific camera technology for our media classes that we have. Those are the kinds of things, printers, just all a variety of things, a lot of ag stuff. So like we did the bovine simulator one year, just all kinds of variety of extra different resources. And we use that money for that specifically. And then we finished up with our KISA School Improvement Day, and I think you probably heard a little bit about that already, but I just have to thank our subcommittee. There's 9 of us that go to that meeting, but we really are the representation of the whole district leadership team, which is made up of all the administrators, coaches, classroom teachers in each building, and then the district central office. And so there's 9 of us then that go on and represent Shawnee Heights to the tune that they asked us to come back and present at the state conference. They were so impressed with some of the things that we were doing. So I just wanted to shout out our DLT has worked really hard, and we've worked hard to share out that information with our staff. And as we wrap up and get the final notification on that and start the next year plan, we'll communicate that out with our families and all the stakeholders again and share a more formal update with you at that time. And lastly, Becky and I work feverishly to prepare for the next year, just like Mrs. Darting mentioned. We're looking at enrollment screens to include information for any policy changes. We are working on curriculum license renewals as those come up. And then also just, I personally have been working on ELL student transitions, so making sure that we're able to continue supports when kids move from one grade to the other and when they move from one building to the next. So we do all of that here in the spring, especially after we get the KELPA results back. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Any questions for Ms. Bell? All right.
Thank
you. Ms. Kinch, Tiffany.
Well, other than all of the fun and wonderful things that I get to go out into the buildings and watch and cover and take pictures of and try to share as many of as I can, there's a couple big things that I am continuing to work on and starting to wrap communications around. I'm continuing to support parents and students and teachers really with Parent Square. So I go out if they need help individually. I'm thinking about how we can start this next year and launch it next year and have some full participation. We still have people registering every day, and we're actually really far along with registering our accounts. So it's looking great, but if you were wondering or if you were curious, the new bill, HB 2299, the cell phone bill, I think it's known as, in that bill there's a piece of it that states that districts must use district-monitored communication platforms. Parent Square does meet that, if you were wondering, so I just wanted to let you guys know that. So we're going to continue to work with our staff and our parents to get us all on board and continue to use Parent Square, but it's been going well. So another piece that I've been working on is the accessibility. That did get pushed, the deadline did get pushed back. However, after some conferences and knowing how big of a job this is going to be, I'm glad that it's gotten moved back. So it's now April of 2028 for our district, that we must have our websites, all our communication, ADA accessible for our parents and students and anyone who would want to get on to our communication and be able to do that. So that's been a dive and just learning what that all means and figure out how we can do that for everyone. So those are my two big things. Are there any questions?
Questions? Nope. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And next, we have Micah.
So just want to give you a quick facility use procedural update as we're looking to make our staff more efficient. This came about because we had complaints from custodians where they're constantly having to open doors, foster to building users. We ended up with prop doors, a more unsecure facility. So we've made some changes to the process. And this is primarily to capture building users that are repeated users. For instance, Mr. Smith has a fourth grade basketball team and he wants to use the Barrington gym 20 times. So moving forward, building users will be required to obtain a KBI background check as part of their request to use the facility. Once that's submitted, it'll go to review process. As part of the review process, once it's been approved, those building users, the point man for whoever's requesting the facility, will get a key fob, so the custodians are no longer being the doormen. That key fob will be set to the specific time and location of use. So once we get the data from their request, it'll go to Shane with security. He'll program the fob to the exact time that they're using the building, the specific location. That fob will not get you anywhere except where you've been approved to go. Without that key fob, you're not going to get in the building. Another thing, you will not get a key fob until all your requests are paid up. So in the past, people would want to reserve the building for 20 times and they want to pay as they went, which was a burden for Cindy, who has to manage all this and collect money from people. So if they want it for 20 times, they're going to pay up front for those 20 times, and then they're going to get their fob, and it's going to be programmed for those times. And if they're over grabbing to get as much facility use reserved for themselves and then they later would cancel, well, now we're not going to give them a refund for that cancel. The account holder who applies for this building use and the fob will be present during the duration of the building use. That's the update on our facility use fob program. And I think it's on the website now, so. Or June 1st, yeah. Thank you, Sarah. We're not implementing this until summer. So as of right now, it's still status quo. And I'm happy to answer any other questions about really anything, roof or otherwise.
I have a couple about the new facilities use policy. So how does that, let me back up with the KBI background check. The last time I had one of those done, it was pretty extensive, fingerprints, the whole 9 yards. Is that still accurate in what you're intending for people to do? They're going to go down and...
It's the same process. It's an online process. It's the same process that we use for our employees. So if we have a building user who's already an employee, they don't have to go through that process because we already trust them. These are for people that we don't really know. And if we're going to give them a fob, we want at least some gateway that they have to pass through. So the responsibility for them to get that background check and get the results to us is on them. Really streamlines it so that our jobs, our custodian's job and Cindy's job is just easier.
Do you have an estimate of, again, I haven't applied for one of those since I was applying to be a substitute teacher 100 million years ago. So do you have an idea as to the timeline for those to return and the cost for those?
I think the cost is like $80, I want to say, per background check, and they're pretty quick.
Sorry?
30 bucks.
So $30, and then they usually take... Like 10 days, a week, something like that? Oh, okay, super fast.
It's pretty quick.
Again, 100 million
And-
years ago.
All things considered, for the generous price that you guys are, our district is very gracious and a good host. I don't think it's too many hoops for them to jump through.
What does that look like for programs? The other question I had for you was the organizations that use our stuff. So for example, the Optimist Club that does their basketball program. So each of those individual coaches, we're going to ask them to volunteer to coach. And Optimist is going to ask them to volunteer to coach. We are then going to want those coaches to submit to the background check and obtain a fob, or will there be some caveat for that organization using the facility?
Yeah, well, as it sits, we want the person that has the background check to be the one in the building.
Okay.
Now, we can't prevent them from loaning their fob to somebody. We're not going to be too overarching with our enforcement. I'm not going to actively look for violations, but we have these things in place in case something goes wrong.
Sure.
We can always pull the fob or decommission the fob remotely. if we had to.
I just want to make sure we're not creating a policy that's overly restrictive, that's discouraging the use of our facilities by the community, because it's a great place for people to gather. So thinking about PTO organizations, those kinds of things where they're, I'll use the example of planning a 6th grade promotion party. Parents are meeting impromptu sort of in a school cafeteria. Is it realistic that I'm going to go get a background check and carry a key fob to access the cafeteria? Probably not. So then is that putting a different burden? Am I pulling in a staff member like a teacher who's going to agree to be there with me? I'm just trying to understand how this cascades.
It'll be super easy for any staff member to reserve the facility.
Sure.
So in an instance like that, you're probably going to have a staff member. I would anticipate there'll be a little bit of a reaction/adjustment period for these people to get used to it. But what I need is, I need the collective community to sort of dance to our music, as opposed to my staff individually tailoring everything to everybody else's thing. I think everybody will adjust to it pretty quickly, and it'll just become the new norm.
Sure. I just wanted to make sure we're not shifting the genre. We're not, your staff's not no longer dancing, but now our teachers are. So I just wanted to clarify
my
that.
goal is to reflect your will, which is to have our facilities be as welcoming as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. That's actually a great way to segue into this, because we have a board policy of KG, use of school facilities by non-school groups, and what you've just described sounds like should be an actual written proposal for changing that policy, so we have the ability to discuss these things. So are we planning on bringing that to us as an action item?
These items were components of the general regulations, and we pulled the general regulations, which gives the district purview to kind of manage the facility use process outside of the policy. And the policy is just the board's policy on allowing use of the facility. But we can certainly bring that to you. I know that some of the changes that we made, we did speak with other districts, and that's kind of where we got our ideas for fobbing. And it wasn't just about creating some efficiencies for the custodial team. It was actually equally as important to us to create more secure facilities. So we have people, now they're getting background checks, which is not uncommon for schools to require, but then they're also going to be having to get those fobs and or getting the fobs, and then the fobs will prevent them from wanting to leave the doors open. And we have that happen a lot, where we walk up to a building where someone has rented the facility and they've got something stuck in the door. And when that happens, anyone that is not supposed to be in the building can come in the building. And so that's kind of where this came from. We can certainly re-add the general regulations to the policy, but we remove them because we make a lot of changes when it comes to using facilities and the timing of things and when we expect people to pay. So it was a thing of having to bring that to you on a real regular basis. It seemed easier for us to just manage the process internally and take that off of the board's plate. But we can certainly, if you would like to revisit that, we can revisit adding the general regulations back into the policy.
Yeah, I certainly recognize and understand the rationale behind it. As somebody who has utilized our facilities, I have understood many of those challenges and have actually wondered at times, why don't we allow fobs or things like that? But I think this is a somewhat significant shift from current practice that could end up being either burdensome to our staff, just as much as it is currently burdensome to our custodial staff, because yes, I've personally had to chase down a custodian to get them to open the door, and that is not effective use of their time. But I am also concerned about it becoming cost prohibitive to some people within our communities or within our community to be able to use our facilities. And I also know that with this change, I know I field questions quite regularly on our facility use policy. And I know that people are going to come to us as the board of why did this get changed? When did you approve this? Was there discussion? And I would just like to make sure that we have thoroughly considered and made sure that we're taking the necessary steps to adjust the policy as we see fit. Because we've had to do that before. I know we've increased our rental fees before. We've changed the procedures on when a custodian needs to be present for events and when it doesn't. We've changed procedures on when can we waive the fees and when can we not. Those are brought to us fairly regularly as well. So I don't understand why we can't, as a board, discuss this recommended change.
And I would say I'm new here, so, but I'm exceptionally uncomfortable with this change because of all of those things. We have 2 Title I schools in our district where families are utilizing free and reduced lunch services and struggling economically potentially. So we've now put a $30 background check, not to mention the cost, but the actual exercise of going and completing it, whether that be online or otherwise. Then we have the facilities rental cost. And then at what interval are those expected to be updated, the background checks to be updated? You have already said we're not going to be pursuing violations of that. We're not going to be looking for violations. So I think it's a misnomer to say that we're securing our buildings if we're not actually policing who's using the fob. If I get a fob in a background check, but I give it to Sarah and she's the one actually accessing it, no one's monitoring that, the building's no more secure than if the door was propped open. So I'm just uncomfortable with this, and I don't know what the normal procedure is, but I'm uncomfortable hearing about it in this setting, and I'm uncomfortable with us not having discussed it. So I just want to make that known to the room, and whatever's supposed to happen appropriately from there can.
And just to clarify, when I say that, I'm not going to actively monitor it. If someone says, hey, someone who's not authorized to use the fob is using it, obviously we'll deal with that. What I'm saying is that I'm not going to be at every event to ensure.
Sure.
Like, there's going to be a level of trust with the community members using this if they've gone through the process.
Sure, understood. And I don't mean to be in any way argumentative, but that's putting the burden right back on the same staff that we're trying to eliminate burden from. If it is the onus of the custodian to say, it wasn't Kristen Fisher I saw in here today, it was Sarah Darding. That's a problem for me. You might want to be a heads up on that. You're putting that same burden on them that it would have taken them to open the door. And I understand there's different things. Hold the door open while I take 4 gallons of trash to the dumpster. I mean, I get it. I've been a PTO volunteer since my kid entered the school. So, but I think about those people who are already struggling. My brain is already in the elementary PTOs where we can't get enough people to show up to volunteer for the carnivals. We don't have enough people wanting to come and support our family engagement nights, those kinds of things. And we're putting one more barrier in that place. And school and the buildings in our district should be community gathering places. I just feel that. And so I want to make sure we're not restricting in a way that causes people to stop engaging, because that engagement is what makes Shawnee Heights really special. So I just want to keep that.
I totally appreciate the feedback. And when we as a, sort of a small committee were looking through this, we were like, hey, we're going to try this. We'll see how it goes. If we need to tweak it in the future, we can do that. But we really, it's hard to weigh, inefficiencies with staff with, you're always picking your battle somewhere. And so this is the system that we came up with that we think is going to work the best. And I do believe that once people adjust to it, it'll just become the norm.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead, Buck.
I was just going to ask, so the way I view this is not really going to be like PTOs, things like that are going to already have a teacher, a principal involved in it. So this is not really on that. It's more of the external, because regular sports have coaches that are staff or approved and all that. So I'm thinking this is more external. So do we have a sense of like how many we're really talking about here? Is this 100 times a year that this is we're gonna have 100 people do this, or is this 20 people? Like I just don't get a sense of how much is this, and is it, or I don't know the fee policy really at all. So is this more of a for-profit type situation where someone's coming in to use it for coaching a youth sport where it's competitive and they may be getting paid, or even if they're not getting paid, they're paying something's happening where parents are supporting that?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in there. I'll tell you a couple of things. One, our fees are really cheap. If you look around town, what the other school districts are charging for their facility use, all of our fees, even our enrollment fees, I mean, they're very low. And again, you're right, that this staff would not be required, all of our staff get background checked when they're hired, so we're not going to require that they get a background check or pay for one. This would be for like your coaches or your one-time uses or your multiple rentals for practices for teams and things like that. And yes, we won't require those people to continue getting background checks either. We perceive it as being a one-time thing for people that are using the facilities regularly, and to secure the facilities. You had another question about the number. I don't know the quantity, but I would not say it's hundreds, but we do have quite a few. We put before the board your major events. You guys are approving big events where, you know, there might attract large groups of people here. But your standard run-of-the-mill practices and all of that, the district has purview. We just approve those as they come through, so long as they meet our requirements.
Yeah, as far as numbers, I mean, sometimes we have 10 a day. So it potentially is a lot.
Okay, so mine is more, I guess I understood it as like Optimist, things that are not affiliated with the school, an outside organization that is just renting our facility. Then she brought up community engagements, family nights. None of that has anything to do with that, because that is a PTO, typically a principal's there, custodians are working the event anyway. This is purely for someone who maybe lives in Washburn Rural that is coaching for Optimist and is using our facility.
Yeah, that's the goal, is to
That's-
capture that group.
So if as an example, because I want to make sure that's not how I understood it. So if I'm wanting to, I'm not a district employee, you don't have a background check on me. I want to run a basketball practice for my son in the Tecumseh South gym next Sunday. Your expectation under this new policy would be that I would submit to a KBI background check. I would pay for that background check. I would receive a key fob. Let's say I was doing weeklies because it's a basketball team, right? So I'm doing weeklies across 3 months. The expectation would be that I needed to background check, key fob, and be the person there policing the entrance and exit of the building. But if I was, for example, as my child's class did, throwing the 6th grade party at Tecumseh South Grade School when they promoted out of the grade school, parent-run activity, bounce houses in the parking lot, cafeteria use for food, I don't need a background check for the one-time event, but I would need it for the ongoing, or it's for both.
So in your examples, first example of a basketball team, you would have to go through the process, unless you had an employee with you as like an assistant coach or something. For the one-time events, if you have a bouncy house, you just need an employee to be present, to be the point man for the event.
Which is different than it is today, because right now I could be there, and as long as the custodial staff is there, we can have that event happening. And so that we're shifting the burden from custodial staff to a building admin or a teacher or somebody like that has to be there. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, if there's no staff there, then you'd have to go through the process.
Okay, so it isn't just outside or people, it is those, and that's what I mean. When I say community engagement, I don't mean when we have the Discovery Center come out, because obviously staff's there then. I mean those types of things, that we're having an ice cream social, we're having a carnival, we're having a promotion party, we're having whatever at the grade schools that are happening, Santa, pictures with Santa, the different things that the grade schools do. Obviously, the middle and high school do things too. Staff is there. Yeah, staff is there. But they can be, but not required to be. I mean, like if it's a PTO event, if it's a PTO ice cream social, my staff is not, the building staff isn't necessarily required to be there. They may not be required to be there, but I guess I've never attended in the 3 elementaries that my kids have attended a PTO event where the principal hasn't been there. Sure. Sure. But
And
again,
I might be able to clear one thing up. So if you apply and you get a fob, that's your fob. You're going to keep that forever. So all you need to do is when you apply for an event, they're just going to activate it for that event.
I understand.
So it's a
but
one-time.
I understand. And in theory, if you had some stability in who your volunteers are in the school or whatever, then that works itself out in the end, right? But again, I don't like anything about it. I'm just going to be real. So
Okay, so I'm just going to mention one thing. It's
Yeah, guys, if
hold on, please. Because what I was referring to was the KG, which is our board policy, use of school facilities. And all my request was because it already talks about lease agreements, or lease arrangements for use of a building more than 10 times, which is what sounds like what you have just described. And so I would very much like to have language that we add to our overall board policy that says that we shall subject those who are seeking to use our buildings for more than 10 times to a KBI background check so that they can be issued a key fob. That's where I was coming from. We can worry about PTO stuff, but as far as use of non-school groups for 10 or more times, I'm totally on board with a background check. I'm totally on board with all of that. I would love to see our custodians' time used differently, just like I'm very much protective of our educators' time. So, but my preference is if we're going to make changes like this that affects directly a board policy, that we have language that is brought for us to consider.
Okay, and I was just going to suggest that we have a discussion at a future meeting to address the policy and make sure that the changes are in line with the board policy. So maybe we could go ahead and get some information to bring this back to the next board meeting as a discussion item.
They have written procedures, so let's get the written version of it. It isn't a policy, it was the procedure process that I think Micah worked with the business office. So let's get that in front of everybody, and you can look at that. So we'll put it on as a discussion item next time, if that works.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Micah.
Okay.
Did you have any other items you wanted to share with us this evening?
No, unless you had any other questions.
Okay, run while you can.
Okay.
Thank you, Micah.
Mr. Dinger.
Good evening, everyone. So just a couple of things. Right now is a pretty busy time for IT. We're gearing up for the end of the school year with only a few days left. We're working on getting all of the procedures in place and getting everything in place to be able to pick up devices at the high school, middle school, and all of our elementaries, and then get started on that stuff for the summer as well. A couple of other things I just wanted to talk to you guys tonight about was some of the projects that we've been working on. So over spring break, we knocked out Barryton's intercom system as well as Tecumseh North's intercom system. We'll also be doing the summertime project of getting Shez, the middle school, and the high school all up to speed and done on the intercom as well. Just a reminder with that puts a phone in every classroom at that point, so everybody will have the ability to make calls, receive calls, and talk to people on an actual phone in a classroom. Right now, we've relied on Jabber on a computer to do all of that, so thinking from the safety and security standpoint, as well as being able to reach out and touch parents and talk to parents, it's just going to be a convenience for our teachers to have that in their classrooms. So we'll have the middle school, Shez, and the high school done by the end of the summer at this point. The other project, as some of you guys may have seen, and Tucker kind of alluded to tonight when he talked about it, is the WAN project is going on right now. So as you guys have seen, some of the fiber being laid across the district area. You'll look for Martin Underground trucks and vehicles. That's who's doing the fiber work for the district right now through WANRAC out of Kansas City. And so we've been working with Tucker and the bond team on where to get those lines and everything in place so we don't have to move them later down the road or anything like that. That project is going on right now at all of the schools, or all of the elementary schools and the high school. So you'll see those trucks moving around over the summer and working on that project. Some of it's going to be buried underground, some will be above ground. We're waiting on some permits from Evergy, KDOT, and from the city of Topeka at this point for some of that stuff going on. So a lot of things going on with IT right now over the past few months. So is there any questions that I can answer for you folks today?
I have one. Okay. Did I hear correctly that you said that with the intercom system, all classrooms will now be able to call outside?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good to know with the new.
Yep. Sweet.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we will now move on to the comments and concerns from patrons. Did we have anyone? No one on the list? Okay, great. We can move on to action items, business by consent. Would accept a motion, any discussion, I guess? A motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Erica, second by Rocky. All in favor? 7-0. Okay, moving on to approve site utilities package, Amendment A. And we have Tucker and Jake.
All right, so this is Jake Hurstrom with Kendall Construction. He's going to give an update for what's in your board packet, but it's about what we talked about earlier about the site utility package.
Hi, so over the past 4 to 6 months, we've been working with HDK and Lighthouse to try to develop these drawings and bring any issues to the surface, do some coordination, and you know, that culminates in 100% CD drawings for utility relocations. About 3 weeks ago, we sent those out to what we call the street or subcontractors and got back some proposals. The work that would be included in GMP Amendment 1 over at Barryton Elementary School, we'll be relocating the grease interceptor, some sanitary lines and storm lines that are currently in the way of the addition. At the middle school, the majority of the work is sanitary relocations with a couple new manholes, or the sanitary on the east side of the building where the new addition is going will be getting relocated, as well as one next to the gymnasium. There is also some electrical work at the middle school, relocating the power and the fiber that feed the monument sign out front. And at the high school building, it's kind of a mixture of a bunch of different items. We'll be relocating a electrical panel that currently serves a force main outside of the gymnasium on the south side. And we have to relocate a water line that is down there as well, and a private fiber line that currently runs from the district's data room or data center on the west side of the school over to the district office, I believe. Yeah, that's what we're requesting approval for tonight. Is there any questions I can answer for anyone?
And can you remind me, so I know that we have this listed as an amendment, but these are all projected costs that we were just working through the project to get like the actual costs associated with them firmed up. So this is tying into the previously budgeted amounts, right?
Yes. So when I said earlier that everything is on budget, these costs are divvied up in the estimate, right? But this is not an estimate. This is a contractual amendment. This is called a guaranteed maximum price.
Tightening
So
up the estimate to actuals, but it was already
but
part of
it's
the
still,
original.
We've taken the GMP amount and it's in the estimates that we're looking at. So we have the complete picture. I want to make sure that we're also being upfront. There's two utilities that are in a private easement that we have to pay separately because they are by a vendor that works with you for those two things. So it's fiber and it's electrical. So we'll be having that discussion probably in the coming weeks about that work. But those are your providers that they give you, it's their easement that you granted them however far back, and if we have to move something that's in their easement, it's on us. So, but this was all projected. We've all talked about it and known about it for months, so it's not a surprise.
Okay. Any question? Okay, Beck?
Quick question. So I know when I first got on the board, we approved like kind of a general overall Kendall contract, and then, so these contract fees, that's all part of, like, we approved that, but these are just a piece of that, like, that's going to deduct from whatever else we got to pay for throughout the different projects,
Yeah,
right?
I believe there's 6 sections on the state form that these guys submitted on, and so as amendments come online, they're going to take portions of that that are applicable to each project, and we're going to keep track and make sure that it stays in line with what
Thank you.
their piece of it is.
Any other questions? If not, I would accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Erica, second.
Second.
Second by Beck. All in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay, next up is approve curriculum maps. This is Miss Bell and Miss Summer.
This is the moment you have all been waiting for. We started way back in September with a curriculum kickoff for our science curriculum. And we met vertically, And we've had meetings throughout the year so that we don't bog down the subsystem with everyone out at the same time. And there's been a lot of hard work that have went into these maps. So tonight, we want to say thank you to the members of our science committee for this year. For elementary science and kindergarten, we have Kaylin Bruns and Mary Kern. First grade, Maddie Foster and Megan Clausen. Second grade, here tonight with us, Erin Lutz and Tony Me Lenz. In third grade, we had Carrie Haddle and Samantha Kramer. Fourth grade, Lauren Constantino and Kim Steben. Fifth grade, Taylor Hawkins and Jordan Ulick. Sixth grade, Cole Emerson, Wade Holthouse, and Sean Jones. None of this work could happen without our teachers being willing to serve on this committee, but also the hard work of our curriculum and instructional coaches. So Beth Baldwin, Wendy Baruth, Stacy Freeman, and Sheila Lewis were a part of the elementary process.
And my secondary friends were represented by the 7th grade science team of Carolyn Gonzalez, Kyle Kennard, and Danielle Mott. And our 8th grade team of Laura Curry, Robin Scarlett, and the 8th grade department chair, who we have here, is Shannon Swift. And our 9th through 12th grade science team of Andy Bassett, Stacy Frayne, Tara Griffith, Lauren Johnston, Sharon McDougall, Jay Reed, Mitch Spade, Bob Wells, and our instructional coaches, Jody Medina and Shannon O'Connor. So thank you again, and thank you, ladies, for coming to the board meeting tonight.
So tonight we bring to you our elementary curriculum maps, which are year-long units for all of those grades K through 6, as well as
our middle school science class is also year-long, and that is 7th grade and 8th grade science. Our high school classes, some of them are year-long, such as AP Chemistry, AP Physics, and then we also have some others that are semester classes. I'll go over that a little bit later, but we have astronomy, biology, chemistry, honors chemistry, humans in anatomy and physiology A and B, humans in the environment, integrated science A and B, physics, zoology, and zoology advanced projects.
I do have to put a plug in for our elementary people. As you noticed when you arrived today, we had an elementary track meet going. So many of those individuals are overworking and making sure that track meet is able to happen. So just a plug for them as we were thinking this was going to be in our April meeting, and it just happens to be on the same night as our elementary track meet. Before we jump in, I just want to remind us that when we think about science, we think about life science, we think about physical science, and also earth and space science. So as we look at these snapshots of the 400-page document that was sent to you all with the actual maps in them, what we're looking for is to make sure that we have science and engineering practices embedded within our inquiry-based instruction. We want students to not just learn about science, we want them to be scientists. We want them to be doing the science. So not just watching it, but actually participating. We want them to be asking questions and thinking critically and revising their thinking along the way based on the science experiments and experiences that they're having, okay? So let's start with kindergarten. Here are some hot topics, some themes that they will be focusing on. Weather, all things weather, observing, predicting, looking for patterns, charting it. Why is it cooler in the fall and winter than it is in the summer? So they'll do all of those things, as well as looking at sun and shade, plant and animal needs, and motions with pushing and pulling, not of each other, of scientific materials. First grade science, we look at light and darkness, sound and vibrations, communicating across distances and how to do that with light or sound, patterns in the sky, day and night, parents and offspring looking at plants and animals, and then learning from plants and animals, designing solutions to human problems. Second grade science, we talk about habitats of land and water, looking at animals and insects and the plants that grow there. Plants with seeds, their needs. I need to take this unit because I can't keep green things alive around my house. But habitats and seed dispersal. They also talk about materials, the properties and changes. So looking the beginning steps of liquids and solids. And then earth events, slow and quick. So erosion and as well as mapping and severe weather. Still with me so far? I'm doing it quick, but third grade science, we talk about environment and survival, so using fossils and looking at the organisms that lived in different environments. And survival depends on habitats. Life cycles, inheritance, looking at how we, plants and animals, inherit traits from their parents. We look at force and motion with unbalanced and balanced, electric and magnets, so the cause and effect of electricity, and also weather and world climate. Fourth grade science focuses a lot on waves and information transfer, as well as light, vision, and processing, really looking at how light reflects and allows objects to be seen. Earth features, again, going back to fossils and seeing how environments have changed over time and the effects of erosion and weathering. We focus a lot on energy. Many of you saw fourth grade had an energy day recently, and so looking at the relationships between speed and energy and how energy is transferred, and then hazards and renewable resources. Sixth grade is all about life and cycles of matter, as well as properties of matter, stars in the sky, water availability and protection, looking at the water cycle, and then looking at salt and freshwater distribution, as well as gravity. One key thing to note about fifth grade, even though you don't see it in the science curriculum, are many of our fifth grade, I think all of our fifth grades, have the opportunity to participate in Starbase. So even though it's not in our curriculum, it heavily aligns with scientific standards in that grade. And last but not least, currently at the elementary school, later transitioning to the middle school, we have our sixth grade science. And so these are some of the topics that are focused on in there, looking at the impact of resource availability, STEM projects, as well as chemical processes, really looking at the ecosystems, continuing some weather and water, looking at thermal energy, scale, gravity, earth, sun, and moon, forces of motion, weather, climate, and more.
So I think you'll see that there's a pattern here, right? And some of these concepts recycle and they learn a little bit more in each of those and get more sophisticated as they go. The 6th through 8th grade standards are banded together, and our 6th through 8th grade team worked together to make sure that they agreed on the standards that are going to be taught in each of the 3 classes. And they have similar resources so that when that 6th grade moves up, we're kind of already ahead of the game. The number of skills or concepts will be different because they will have more science and we'll have to send an update. But the actual concepts will all flow very nicely. So once students get into the 7th grade, they begin to look at chemical interactions. They dive into waves and then diversity of life. So they really start looking at cells and using a microscope and some of those fun experiments that they do. In the 8th grade, they look at heredity and adaptations. They spend quite a bit of time on Earth history, looking at weather, erosion again, and fossils, and igneous rocks, and volcanoes, and earthquakes, and the rock cycle, and really kind of having a better understanding of the Earth. And then they move into Earth, Moon, and Sun, so we get some of the space in there with lunar phases, eclipse, and seasons. And all throughout, but really looking at the engineering unit, the scientific method unit that they have. They do a straw rocket unit, and the kids really enjoy that. And then they wrap up the school year with environmental science, and they look at a variety of things: natural disasters, human impact, resource consumption, global climate. Then we move into the high school, and the high school just kind of reminds you from a graduation standpoint, if a student is looking at becoming a Kansas scholar, their trajectory in science is biology, chemistry, and physics in some capacity, whether they're taking honors chemistry, AP chemistry, or regular chemistry, any of those work. If they are not interested in taking that, or their path changes, every kid's going to take biology, but some of these other classes that we'll get to in just a little bit are what they would supplement instead of the chemistry and physics. So you'll see some of these concepts also still keep going and get more sophisticated as we go through. Biology, they're still working really hard on the scientific method and having a more sophisticated approach to that. They talk about characteristics of life, biochemistry. They really get into cells like mitosis, genetics, DNA, biodiversity, ecosystems, and body systems. In chemistry, they talk about the science and engineering practices again. They spend quite a bit of time with the periodic table and bonding. They learn about everything there is to know about moles. And if you ask kids about that, they'll be able to tell you lots. Chemical reactions, gas laws, acid and bases, things like that. And then you can see many of those concepts transition into honors chemistry, but there is a difference in some of the concepts, such as balancing equations and reaction types, and learning about different properties in the periodic table and Lewis's structures within that. Our AP chemistry, just to remind you, is a college level class that they take at high school, and then they can choose to take the AP exam. And if they pass it with a 3.45, they get college credit. Otherwise, it stays as a high school credit. But many of those structures are still there. They talk about the atomic structure and properties, more sophisticated than just talking about the periodic table. And they look at molecular and ionic compounds, chemical reactions, kinetics, equilibrium, acid bases, all of that. Then the kids transition to physics, where they're talking about one-dimensional motion, forces and Newton law, energy conversion, waves and sound again, electromagnetic waves. And then the AP course is the same as the AP chemistry, and they get into more advanced concepts such as linear momentum, torque, energy momentum. They do a lot of experiments where they're measuring all of the labs that they do. If a student isn't necessarily interested in the chemistry, physics, they do an integrated science A and B, where they take all of those skills that Mrs. Hummer just talked about, physical science, chemical, space, earth science, and they spread those concepts out into 2 semester-long classes. And they really start talking about space and the universe, rapid changes to the earth, atmosphere, and climate. The other class, they talk about chemistry and physics within those classes. And then kids can take other things such as astronomy, where they really spend a lot of time talking about the sun and the life cycle of stars, Big Bang, scientific research presentation, where they get to pick concepts in earth space science that they want to study and present to their classmates on that. Other elective offerings that we offer are human anatomy, physiology A and B, another split. There's each semester classes, so if you take humans A, you're going to be talking about the systems of the skeletal system, the muscular system, the nervous system, the endocrine system. B goes into circulatory, respiratory, immune, digestive, reproductive systems. And then humans in the environment, they talk about ecology and population, resources, and human impact. All of those classes are semester classes. And our other offering for electives would be zoology. So kids learn about animals, sponges, worms, vertebrates, non-vertebrates, all of the things about zoology. And then advanced projects typically tend to be students that are working to take that knowledge and create science experiments and do a lot of research and then present the information they find after that. So that is a culmination of all science classes except for college biology, which we will bring next time, and 3 resource science classes, which we'll bring next time. So with that, we'll take questions, but asking for approval for those curriculum maps.
Okay, questions, Erica?
I do have a quick question. I noticed that none of the ag sciences are on there. Why are those not part of the science curriculum? Horticulture, animal science.
Yes, because you've already approved those, first of all.
Right, but those are not considered a science credit.
Correct.
Why not?
3 of them are, so the not intro to animal science, that's the intro class, but the next level up, the first 3 are. So animal science, plant and animal, plant and soil are considered science credits. After that, they're not.
Why is that?
Partly because we need kids to take a wide variety of science. If we allow all of those to also count for a science credit, they'll never get the opportunity to take they won't have a need to take biology or chemistry or physics or any of those other classes that we're asked to have kids take. The other thing is that there's a recommendation by the state board that part of those 3 science credits are talking about biology, physical science, and there. So that was a compromise that we did.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Lauren?
I have a question as a follow-up on that. So do we, is biology or, I know when I was in high school, we had an empirical science, which was like a physical science class that was basically like a prerequisite to other science classes.
Yes.
So do we not have essentially a prerequisite requirement to take some of those ag science classes?
Not the ag science hierarchy is they have to take the introduction, and then they can take the animal science, plant and soil, and then from there they can take the other ones like horticulture and things like that. So there is a prerequisite setting for that. And as far as all of these other ones that you're just looking at, they all have to have biology to be able to take any of those other elective classes.
And so is the determination of not allowing some of those ag science classes count as science credits, is that our determination or KSDE's determination?
That is our local determination.
Okay. The other question that I had was, how much time in the elementary level, how much time estimated, I don't expect an exact answer, but is spent on the actual doing of science? I know we do a lot of crossover of, we're actually doing reading, but some of that reading has a science focus, but how much actual science on average do we do in elementary?
So maybe Erin will answer this question. I can tell you, the state recommends 45 minutes daily for science instruction. But the reality is, in a classroom, that doesn't typically happen. So a lot of our conversations were about that. If we have crossover with, for instance, Benchmark, our ELA curriculum, there's a whole unit on energy. So teaching science at the same time as you're learning and reading about it makes sense. So they built curriculum maps with those things in mind of how can we have some of those cross-cutting concepts, but support it not only in the reading piece of it, but doing the science hands-on with it as well. What I typically see is social studies has a unit, and then we have a science unit. Not that you're having social studies and science in the same day. But you also have classrooms where they might be having it on the same day because that's how that teacher has decided to utilize the curriculum maps and build it into their daily schedules.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Price, I would like just to go back and say, during this year of science review, I went through every single high school student to see how are they earning their science credits. And every kid but 4 were able to get all of their science credits with the normal science classes, and there were 4 that needed that animal science or one of those other classes. And so all of our kids are currently getting all of their science credits through that. And our students are taking well above the required 3 credits of science needed. So that is another factor in that decision-making process.
Any other questions? Oh, Lauren?
I'd move approval.
Motion by
second.
Lauren,
Second.
second by Christy. All in favor? Okay, 7-0. Thank you. And don't go anywhere because now we're going to look at curriculum map. Oh, no. We're going to look at the curriculum, PD, and resources.
So we'll tag team this a little bit too here. Because you just approved those maps, we would like to purchase the resources that go along with them in order to do those maps. So at the elementary level for K through 5, we selected Mystery Science in addition to the FOSS kits that we already have. Our grade levels were purposeful on some things in FOSS are great, some things in Mystery Science are great, so we're going to kind of marry the two when appropriate. But for the vast majority of what we are going to be doing next year, it will be Mystery Science, and we're excited about that. So we're asking for a 6-year digital teacher licenses in order for us to access that curriculum. And then our first year, we will also be purchasing classroom kits that will then be, the consumables will be replenished each year. And then we move on, and along with that, the professional development, because you can't have new curriculum and not have some professional development on how to fully access that and utilize it.
The middle school decided to keep their current FOSS kits as is, so we'll just have yearly consumable replacement as we've had for the majority of the years here. But our high school, with all of those different classes, they were given a variety of vendors, and they determined that McGraw-Hill, their Inspire Science collection, would be where they wanted to spend their resources. So that would be for biology, chemistry, physics, some earth, space, environmental science, those classes. A couple of the other ones, like astronomy, those other little ancillary ones, one class needs Cengage for $5,220, which gets them a classroom set of books, and Pearson was the other course, and that was for $3,996. So we're asking for approval of the whole curriculum of $132,389, and then the $4,500 in PD.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm assuming this is one of those instances where our middle school curriculum covers 6th, 7th, and 8th?
Yes.
Okay.
So during the slideshow, the pictures that you saw were from Mystery Science for K through 5, and then you saw the 2 FOSS kits at 6th grade, because those will feed in directly to middle school.
Any other questions?
Did I hear you correctly say that there would be consumables at the elementary level that would be replenished each year? And are those on par with what we're doing today, cost-wise?
They are. In fact, they probably will cost less than what we are currently doing each year.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question on McGraw-Hill. Is that an annual renewal, or is this physical textbooks that we'll have for years to come? Okay.
Physical textbooks. The teachers will have, their teacher manuals will be online, but those are free for us.
Any other questions?
Can I go back to Kristen's, may I call you Kristen? Sorry. I wanted to just say that those consumables, we utilize student fees in order to do those each year, so.
I move approval.
Motion by Lauren,
I'll second.
second by Erica. All in favor? 7-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank
And thank
you.
you so much to the committee. I know it's a ton of work. It's fun to see some of the favorite sections that I know my boys have done. So thank you so much for your work. Okay, we will move on to discussion items. Superintendent's report, Ms. Smeggers.
Okay, you've already heard bond updates, and you've heard updates from every department. So I'm going to do kind of a calendar update. It's busy from here until the next board meeting. So starting tomorrow, we have staff appreciation. Just a reminder, if you're signed up to serve cinnamon rolls, that is first thing tomorrow morning. If you haven't signed up and still want to, you can honestly just show up to one of the buildings and we will take you. Scholarship night is this Wednesday at 7 at the high school. Orion graduates, I put that in a Friday note a couple weeks ago maybe. That came up last year at a board meeting. Do we do anything to recognize them? And they do have a nice ceremony. Orion does it and invited us. That is this Saturday at 2 o'clock. Next Monday, playground work starts at Barryton. They'll start seeing some things happening. We'll take pictures once we have that. And then next Tuesday is the foundation staff mixer. Wednesday is the high school retirement reception, and I will put all this in the Friday notes with times and locations. But I want you to realize, like, every day there's something you can attend if you would like. Next Wednesday, May 13th in the afternoon is the high school reception, a retirement reception. That is all the high school teachers and admin that are retiring, plus Mr. Hirsch. So there are a lot of years represented in that group. That's Wednesday. Thursday, we have grad walks at the elementary buildings, graduation practice then here at the high school, and the senior lunch. I'll put all those times in again. And then next Sunday is graduation, and then on the 18th, on the 17th, and the 18th we have a board meeting again. So there really is something fairly significant almost every day. But I will put all that in the Friday notes just as a reminder. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Smeggers? Okay, thank you. We will move on to student recognition. Ms. Smeggers.
Okay, I just want you guys to decide, as we look ahead to next year, sometimes we get requests for student recognition and we're happy to do it. What we don't want to do is just include people when someone mentions it, and we don't want to forget groups or people. And so do you want to do people that have placed at state? The high school, I did talk to Mrs. Monholland today. If somebody places at state, they recognize them at the next event, so or the next athletic season. If somebody places at something in the fall, they will recognize them at a basketball game. And if it's in the spring, she said it's at a fall football game. So they do some recognition at the high school for state placers. But we don't necessarily have anything real consistent. And so I just wanted to see what you guys would like, and we'll start that next year. But we just didn't want to leave people out if we were going to do it. So just throwing that out for some discussion or ideas.
Discussion. I have ideas.
I think word in the hallways is not all children or students, or older students, are comfortable coming to the board meetings, and I don't know that that's something they enjoy, and I don't know that I would have as a kid.
It's not a reward.
But I love the idea of us recognizing, being a part of the recognition at the events. Instead of having them come to us, we go to them. But it's one thought.
Christy, did you have something?
I know 2 years ago when our boys bowlers won state, we recognized them at a board meeting. They won this year, and we have not recognized them. So I know, now keep in mind 2 years ago was the first time our boys have ever won state at bowling, but then again, they did it this year. So, and yeah, I don't think it's necessarily, well, for bowling, I know we're at a bowling alley. It's not like we're at the school, so nothing ever gets recognized.
Yeah. I had an idea of something that I thought the kids might enjoy more, is if we maybe got either banners or like those vinyl banners or the like yard sign letters where we could maybe go to the buildings where, whether it's debate or I know we had our bunch of spelling bee kids, things like that, that we could do something like in front of the building itself so the kids would see that and maybe feel recognized, and then all the kids coming in too would feel recognized. I don't know what significance the board has to a third grader or a fourth grader versus a high school child, but I thought that would be a neat way to let the community see too, where other parents that are maybe dropping their kids off may not know that some accomplishment was had. I know like Lauren's daughter did a science activity, and I bet that there are a lot of parents in your building that would be really excited to know that. They just didn't have the opportunity to know and be able to recognize her, where maybe we could work on doing something that kind of helps the building and other people also be excited for those students and their accomplishments.
Like she said. And that was something that we could probably improve. And we need a point person, I think, at the buildings so that we don't skip things and we're attending things and we do the yard signs or, yeah.
I like the idea of giving them the option to come here. I mean, I have a quiet kid who is not going to want to come here. I get it. But I think that because this is something that is streamed for the district where, you know, the grandma, the uncle, the aunt, the whoever, they're all seeing that recognition. You kind of hit on one of my passion buttons too, because I think we do a generally poor job of celebrating the things that we're doing a great job of, even at the high school level. You know, we have academic awards like letters and things like that that are literally the kids are called to the office and handed an envelope. Not that you're calling every kid who earns a letter here, but I mean, I think we could do a whole lot better job of celebrating our successes. And so if that brings at all levels, the elementary, I didn't even know that that program was happening, that, you know, Rhonda Lefford was doing those types of things. Both my kids interacted with Rhonda Lefford at the grade school. So I just didn't know that. And I appreciated finding it in the, you know, Friday notes, but if I wasn't a board member, I wouldn't have known it happened. And so I like the idea, and I'm never driving by Barrington Elementary on a random Tuesday, you know, ordinarily. And so I think that I love that idea, maybe in partnership with the invitation for them to come here. And if it just isn't a good fit, they don't have to come. But I would like to see us at least celebrate our successes loudly.
We used to invite all of the students in various activities and recognize them. Do you remember this, Rocky? And then the coach or the event sponsor would have certificates for each of the kids. If the students weren't available, they just didn't come, but they still got a certificate. Their name was still read. They were still recognized. It's not only about recognition of the students, but it's also recognition about our staff and the coaches and the activity sponsors and all of them. They deserve recognition from us as well. I don't remember why. I think COVID had something to do with us stopping that, and then we never came back to doing that recognition. But we've recognized Eagle Scouts. We've recognized ACT high scorers, SATs. We've done academic team. We've done all of the activities from all the sports too. And it wasn't even just like, I don't think they were even state placements. It was like, it's the end of the season. We're going to recognize you for your participation, and here are their accolades. Here's what they achieved for the year. But then we've also had others trickle in for their other accomplishments.
I remember like one student like hadn't missed a day of school or
Yes,
something. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
perfect attendance for like all of high school. Yeah.
or something. So
I just want to go back and clarify. Tiffany, I don't mean that you are doing a poor job of anything. I just think as our buildings get busy, as I said that in my head again, I just wanted to be very clear, you're doing a fantastic job. So, but I think even if it was something as simple as a form on our website where we have the Hall of Fame nominations, for example, as a district, could we just have something that like, this is a great thing happening at, I'm using your daughter's example with Rhonda Lefford because it's in my head, but maybe a colleague of Rhonda's is like, this is great. This is a great thing Rhonda's doing, and I want to celebrate her. Could it just be something that simple?
Yeah,
And then that generates us to generate an invitation to them. And if they don't choose to come, no harm, no foul. We're not upset about it. But I just think that we should be accessible to them, and we should be celebrating.
What if it was something like you said, a request somehow on the website that I would like my team to be recognized at a meeting, but then, I mean, they would have to it'd have to go out district-wide to have them have a spot where they can ask for the request, whether they can request some of us to come to their banquet or have them come here, but then they get to choose the option of what they want to do.
And that's where I think, is it just a simple contact form on the website? Like, this is a great thing
it's a good
happening
idea.
at Tecumseh South. I would like you to come on Thursday at 10 a.m. or I would like to come to you and celebrate these people. Like, I mean, I don't know. I think I just added to your plate, Tiffany. I'm sorry.
So maybe my only concern with that is the equity issue. I mean, if we make them all, like we do them quarterly and we're recognizing all of the activities at each period of time, then it's very visible. It's consistent. We're doing it at the same time, like we do it once a quarter or whatever, and it shows that we are recognizing all of the things. Whereas if we do some of them here and we do some of them there and we do some over here and, you know, on all of that, one, all 7 of us may not have the opportunity to go to where those are, and 2, it creates the perception of, well, the board is only inviting certain people to be recognized at board meetings versus others. And so I would rather it be a consistent, equitable thing of either they all come here or something.
I guess I feel like asking a lot of questions today. I'm sorry, Lauren, but not arguing with you, but does it not create equity by it being a publicly available contact form? Because I'm even thinking, like, clear back when my kiddos were in 3rd grade, there was an elementary teacher, Amber Talaferro, at Tecumseh South, and it was a snow day. And God love her, she popped on to Facebook Live and was reading to the kids and doing, because back then we didn't have the tools that we do now, right? So she was like, if you get on my classroom page, I'm going to read to the kids at this time. And she was, so that would, as a parent, I would have jumped on and been like, hey, you know, Amber deserves some special like love. And whether that goes to Tiffany and then it gets routed back to the building admin or it gets routed to us, but just like a shout out opportunity is what in my brain I'm thinking of, because I think that also just in that initial discussion listening, we went straight to athletics. We were talking about, or extracurriculars, you know, so there's a whole lot of really great things happening to the point of, you know, the science contest. There's a lot of really great things happening that have nothing to do with like those conventionally organized things that we all think of for celebrations.
I think that's a great idea, but also having
Yeah,
the
I was going to
idea
just
of
say, actually, yeah, I see them as
having-
2 different things.
We have an athletics director, having that person be our point person for people at the high school for all activities, not athletics, but activities, forensics, debate, and making sure that we're recognizing those folks. And we have to have somebody there that's contacting us, because there's no way we can keep track of all that.
Okay, but to your point, Kristen, I know that at Shez, there is a way that you can submit shout outs, and sometimes they do submit shout outs in the newsletters. And I don't see any issue, like, yes, please, let's have all the shout outs we can. Like, I'm not objecting to that form at all.
Sure.
My concern with equity is how we go about recognizing them. And I know since we have shifted to how we do the building reports here, so monthly, we used to do them monthly. And there were shout outs by building admins frequently of, you know, different staff doing different things in those buildings. And so because we did shift away from that, this is not an opinion on that shift whatsoever. I'm just pointing out that the change is that we don't get those shout outs monthly like we may have previously, just like we're not doing the regular recognition of the students anymore either.
So to your point about consistency, do we know, is that same opportunity at each of the grade schools? Because it's been a hot minute since I've had a kid in grade school.
It is at Barretton.
I think so, but I have no objection to there being something.
Sure, we just, when my kiddos were at South, we didn't have a newsletter. So we weren't receiving that, and so we wouldn't have seen, you know, and so, but that's been, I mean, I have high school kids now, so the things could have, and I transitioned kids out in the COVID era, so lots of things have changed since then.
Yeah.
So,
well, and prior to the death of print media, there used to be, I mean, that used to be a newsworthy thing. If we, as a board, were recognizing students, usually we would have somebody cover that. And so now, unfortunately, Tiffany has the job of filling in.
Yes. No, like I said, I'm open to whatever. I would love to see us have more opportunities to celebrate than less. And so whatever that looks like, I think we can have some good discussions around it. But I think that we have really talented educators. We have really high achieving students in several ways, extracurricular and otherwise. And we ought to be singing about that pretty loud.
Mm-hmm.
I see that as someplace on the website or whatever to give a shout out to the teacher or
we could get, we could work with athletic directors and principals, building principals, and probably collect this pretty consistently. We just wanted to have it in place when we started the year next year, so it was equitable and fair. So if you're okay with that, and then we can, I don't know if every building has shout outs, so we can do a little research on that. I mean, if they have
And-
a place to report.
And again, not a big deal, just there's lots to celebrate, so we should do that. That's a lot more fun than talking about some of the things we get to talk about, so.
And one other question, would you rather have quarterly or second board meeting of the month? Because first board meeting, we're going to have Tucker for 3 years. He's not going away. And we always have the status reports, and so that takes a little bit of time. Thoughts on second, if we have people, so we're keeping them consistent? Okay.
And I think we just probably want to define what's an activity, because to me, debate and forensics is a class, but also an activity. Band is a class, but also an activity. Yearbook, Sure, but I'm saying I think we just want to be clear about, what that is. What is an activity that we're asking the building? Yeah. Any above and beyond.
Recognize community members that helped a person that got hit by a car before or had a medical emergency. So I think it's our community that we want to celebrate. Okay. Any more discussion on that one? I think that was a really good starting point. Okay, we have the KASB policies first read. Ms. Meggers.
Okay, these are KASBs. They don't break down what would go into handbooks. We're still working on that with the cell phone one, but these are the overarching KASB policies that would go on the website. The first one, first of all, these both came out of the same, that House Bill 2299. They were just two separate pieces of it. We currently have a staff online activities policy. This just has some revisions to it. One of the big pieces to it is that staff cannot just individually communicate with a student through any kind of a social media platform. And Tiffany talked about that. Parent Square meets all the criteria for this bill. It is it is district owned. It is district monitored. So it's a qualified social media option or communication tool. And so we just are working on making sure that all staff know they have to use that kind of a tool. But this bill, just in the red, and I think these are attached opposite of what they're listed in the table. So this is actually the second bill listed. But you can see all updates and changes in red. And then let me cover the other one real quickly, and then you can ask questions. The second one is the cell phone bill. And it's kind of known as a cell phone bill, but it's really the electronic communication devices, student communication devices. And this one just requires that students cannot use bell to bell once they enter the school. They cannot use or access personal electronic devices, primarily phones, but it does include AirPods and watches and things like that as well. So we're working on methods, elementary through high school, what that looks like at each level, and we'll come with a recommendation on that. But this policy is just overarching and identifies, it really lines up with the law, is what this does. So this is a brand new policy, just fresh from KASB. So I'm happy to answer questions or let you discuss, but this is just a first read. We're not approving anything tonight.
Any questions or discussion?
So the language that's been provided is straight from KASB?
Correct. Word for word.
Couple of questions. Do we have any current classes that dives into social media and its requirements? And does this take away their ability to talk about that or go research a little bit of social media?
It limits it, yes. They can still use a school device. I have to think what the wording is exactly. It will limit a little bit their just getting out there on Facebook or on, Stacy, did you want to add on to that? I'm trying to locate it.
Currently, social media is blocked on any of the student devices, so they would still be able to do that at home for homework if if that is something they wanted to do, but it wouldn't be allowed on the district devices. And so most of the time, it is not a requirement for kids to be on social media. Most of the time, if they're needing something, a teacher is showing or finding clips of things and doing it in that capacity.
It does have a little bit with the social media and learning, but the primary goal is that you don't have staff members and students just communicating and it's not can't be monitored. If there ever was a concern, it's really a safety thing for everybody on all sides, but if there ever was a concern, we can actually pull that communication if a parent said, hey, I have a concern. And so the intent behind it was a safety thing for all involved.
2 questions. So the whole thing with AirPods and headphones and all that, that's obviously going to present, I think, a pretty significant challenge, I would assume, for a number of our classes, since so many of the things are video-based and, whatnot. Have we given any, is there any caveat to that? If they're being used for that purpose, my daughter's taking an online college class in a room with several other kids that are also taking different online college classes. So she has to put them in and listen to things on her MacBook. So are we going to have freedom to make those sorts of exceptions, or they can't be in the building and we've got to provide then some other resource for her to listen?
We can use the kind that have the old-fashioned
Cord.
kind that plug in with cords.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of.
We've talked about it, yeah.
I remember how arduous that was when my kids were in grade school and we still had to use that technology and they were always broken or lost or, sounds like a great time for our teachers. The second question I had was under the permitted exception when it talked about the least restrictive intervention for them, and then it being approved by a licensed physician as an example. And this may not be an appropriate conversation for today, and it's okay, Ms. Meggers, if it's not, we can talk about it later, but my question to that is, I foresee a number of doctor's notes coming in that say my kid needs to have that phone as a necessity. So what burden do we bear to weigh that out, or is simply having that physician's note sufficient justification for them to not abide by the policy?
Okay, are you reading about the 4th paragraph down?
I am on page 4, and there's an underlined header, permitted exception.
Okay.
And it just says that any student may use a personal electronic communication device during the school day if it is the intervention of last resort. And then it goes on to say, and it is either required for their IEP or 504 or approved by a licensed physician. So my concern is, does that put us in a position of having to quantify whether that is actually a medically necessary, you know what I mean? If we get into kind of a cycle of whose medical necessity is actually medically necessary, or is that just going to be the loophole?
Probably be a case by case.
Okay,
yeah.
When I read it, that was my first thought, is that leaves a little bit of a ambiguity.
But I can think of kids that maybe have blood sugar monitoring, that's a medical
that's
necessity to
legitimate.
have the device that can tell them if their blood sugar is low.
I 100% think that was the intention. I just think that, right, and that may be, and that may be wholly valid. I mean, that may be a real thing for that student, but there may be cases where, and so are we under any burden to be compliant with the law to weigh that out, or we just say, hey, doctor said, so we just have to, no different than you bring me a note and say you have a peanut allergy, I'm just going to trust your doctor.
Or attendance or other things. Are we going to question it? Probably not.
Okay. I didn't know because this feels.
The majority of them are legitimate anyway. And so maybe they all are. Are we going to debate that? Probably not.
Okay. This feels like a policy, nothing to do with anybody in this room. This feels like a policy, and nothing to do with KSB either, but from a legislative standpoint, from people who haven't been in the school setting for a long, long time. So yeah. I think that there's a lot of gray areas for us.
There is some. I think it is intended for exactly what she just mentioned. There are some legitimate. We have kids with very legitimate things that may not be in a 504 or in an IEP. And so I think it wants to recognize that there are other things that we could allow it for.
Did you have, Lauren, questions?
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
Okay.
One is a follow-up on that. I haven't read the bill since its first iteration. Is there a definition of licensed physician, or are we going to get notes from chiropractors for this?
think it says licensed
Yeah, I was
physician
gonna
like
say,
this. We'll
COVID all
double
over
check.
again, yeah. But I would love to know if the underlying bill defines licensed physician for that. My second question is, did you, Ms. Meggers, or anybody else from Shawnee Heights provide any kind of input, whether it be testimony or signing on to anything from USA or KASB or anything like that, in reference to this bill before it was passed by the legislature?
Yes, we were, we had many people speak up. We were not in favor of the overreach on this one.
But did anybody
Shawnee
specifically from Shawnee Heights?
Mm-hmm. Superintendents all across Shawnee County, we all reached out, so we were.
Publicly or just?
To legislators.
Okay.
And USA encouraged it. We reached out on several things.
I also worry about the potential need of increased security in the parking lots. If we have however many students at the high school and we have phones in the vehicles, and obviously this is a statewide, so everybody's gonna know you can go to a school parking lot and you're gonna get 400 cell phones. So. Credit cards stuck to them.
Something tells me this is going to be revised at some level fairly quickly. No. Lauren's saying no. Okay, I trust your legislative expertise, but my goodness, this is terrible.
Beck, did you have a question or
Yes,
comment?
sorry, going back to the social media, do we have, what if we have a few social media accounts, I think, related to the school? If someone private messages those or something, do they get redirected to say, hey, can you email us, or to keep the private conversation from happening?
We have school-owned ones, so then we can track them, and they're school-owned. So that meets the criteria. We will make sure that, it's going to take us a minute. We're working on that already, actually, at the high school. If they are personally owned, or I guess it's just a staff member set them up, that wouldn't be school-owned. Tiffany, did you want to add on? I saw. And this.
I have two questions.
Yes. Okay, Christy?
One, under, let's see what page this is, page 4, under youth steering school-sponsored activities before and after school. It says students may/shall not, well, which is it? Use or access personal electronic communication devices during school-sponsored activities, programs, or events occurring before or after the regular school day.
Our discussion and recommendation would be to say they may, once we're outside of the school day, because the law says bell to bell. So if they're at a football game or if they're at a after-school activity, our recommendation would be to say they may use it.
Okay. My other question is, does this also pertain to staff, that they cannot be on their phones scrolling?
It's a student bill.
So I was afraid of.
How does this apply to field trips?
It isn't real clear on that, so we have to figure that out in, we'll probably have to designate that in the handbooks. If a student, like a high school student, is driving to an off-campus course, they can get their phone and take it with them. It doesn't count there. It's bell to bell on the school campus. We have not clarified that in the handbooks yet.
I may be off base, but on page 4, under the, again, just above that permitted exception, there's a school day definition. And what it says is the term school day excludes any time associated with a student's travel to or from a learning experience that is not located on the school premises, including post-secondary educational courses, career technical education course, work-based learning program, or other alternative educational opportunities. So I would assume a field trip would fall under that alternative educational opportunity, but you know what happens when you make assumptions about these such things. So But when I had read it, I had that same question, and that's how I interpreted it.
We were interpreting that to be like high school students that are traveling to different opportunities. But again, you could interpret that a couple of ways. So we'll work with admin on what their recommendation would be for field trips. And that may look different at different grade levels.
Sure.
It's not clear.
It does, yeah. So that gets a little sticky there. I wish all of the admins and the teachers and you lots of luck with this one. Obviously we'll we'll adopt some policy as a board, but I think the day-to-day implementation of policing this is going to be really burdensome for them, so.
How will the state monitor it?
But the day-to-day monitoring, there's nothing in place for that. Yeah, we do have to submit, we have to certify our plan with the state by, I think it's September 1st. It says on a approved form, and we haven't even seen the forms yet. I'm sure they'll come out this summer, but it's an initial, we have a plan in place. Right now, that's the monitoring. Or the requirement.
Sheila, are you working with the different school districts in our area just to kind of at least talk policy together so that maybe there's a cohesive message that comes out?
It may not be exact.
Right.
None of us have the wording yet finalized. But yes, we are talking. We have talked about it many times. And even statewide, we've had discussions. And each district and community will do what works. But I think we're going to look pretty similar across Shawnee County. Maybe not exactly, but I think it'll be pretty similar.
And there will be some cost associated to this, I presume, because we're going to have to implement some sort of device storage opportunities or something like that in the buildings, or I know that's still up in the air a little bit, but have we given any thought to the fact that there's going to be a huge influx of potential ordering of those silly pouches or things like that?
Well, this says it has to be left in the car or at home.
Or away from the student.
Or inaccessible.
Inaccessible to the student. So if they have those little locking pouches and they can, So my question is, if all districts in Kansas are trying to order these pouches, are we going to have those, if that's what we're doing, are we going to have those in place in time for the start of the school year? That was where it was going.
We have been advised not to make large purchases yet. The
Very
intent
good.
behind this bill was not to place a lot of undue burden and expense on districts. We have
Okay.
been told that. And so we're working on some options, trying to give kids some choices and not create a huge expense.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other? Oh.
Could that include if parents would require that their kid carry the phone, that they would pay for the pouch of some sort? That's thought.
We've looked at it from a lot of angles, so until we get it narrowed down,
Sure.
100% finalized, but yes, have we talked about all of those? Yes. Okay, yes.
Any other questions or discussion?
I just hope that advice is coming from a place where there's exploration of challenging this law, as it is a massive overstep of our constitutional authority.
Okay, we'll see these back at a future time for further discussion or, okay. All right, moving on. Comments or questions from Board of Education members?
Okay, here I go. Micah, I just want to apologize for me being really passionate with you when you were up here. I appreciate what you're trying to do to secure our buildings. I think it's important. I just always think about our least, accessible, creating the least burden for our families, and I'm pretty passionate about that in general. So I think that carried over towards you, and I didn't intend for it to. So thank you. I do appreciate your ideas, and you're doing a great job. The other thing I wanted to say was we had prom this weekend. I know I saw Sarah working post-prom with me. I think everything went fairly uneventfully and great. Saw lots of pictures of our staff all decked out in their Star Wars attire at prom, and I just wanted to acknowledge everybody, both community volunteers and staff members who gave their time and their creativity and everything else to make that event successful for our kids. I saw lots of happy kiddos leaving post-prom at nearly 3 a.m. So anyway, just want to appreciate everybody that does that. There's a ton of work that goes into that, both from a community volunteer standpoint and from a staff standpoint. Ms. Coulter and and so on and so forth. So just wanted to say thanks for that. I think everybody had a great time.
Lauren?
I'll piggyback on that, Micah. I think you brought a very valid concern up. And actually, I want to thank you for bringing that up, because in sitting here scanning the policy versus the general regulations, there's some disconnect between them, and I think it would be worth reviewing all of it based on what you said versus what we have here. There's contradictions and conflicting things. For example, it says like there has to be a staff person in attendance for the whole duration for all of our events, and that is not consistent with other practices. And so I think this is just a really great opportunity for us to make sure that we're reviewing all of that. The other piece I would add is there is a piece in here that says, it's number 16, Sarah, in general regulations. I'll note this for you. Because my concern about this is it mentions about being a person reimbursing the district for any property damage. And I would think that if a person were told, hey, you have to repair this and are subject to this, and they were to appeal it or object to it or something like that, it would ultimately come back to us, and we don't have a board policy that addresses that. And so I think there needs to be some review on some of these regulations as to whether they should be regulations or whether they should be board policy, so that we as the board know what those policies are and can back up the other decisions that are made.
Any other? Rocky?
I just wanted to say, I'm proud of Shawnee Heights. For a couple Saturdays ago, we hosted a Special Olympics event out at the track and field. So it was, parking lot was full. Seeing the athletes and participants out there competing and just having fun, and it was a neat thing to see. So I'm proud of Shawnee Heights for supporting that.
I just had a couple myself. I wanted to congratulate the Barretton Drama Club on an amazing performance of Madagascar Junior. The staff that they work almost the whole school year with students to put that on, and the students do both the acting as well as like backstage. Mr. Boyer's stagecraft kids help with some of the props this year. So it is a growing production that they've been doing for the last several years. It's really neat and fun to see the kids and how they are just growing in their confidence. So really, really fun to see that. I was going to say shout out to the prom and post-prom committees. I know that was a lot of work for a lot of people, but the kids looked like they had fun. I know Buck got to participate in the fun Shez Energy Day. So thanks to Shez for hosting that, and thanks for being there. My fourth grader came back with all sorts of fun information about energy. He loves doing things like that. So thanks to the district for supporting that. And then I know we have a T-Bird Talk Wednesday over the noon hour. So I think that we've publicized that information, and it's going to go over curriculum maps. So for anybody that's watching and may wonder why Mrs. Spell and Mrs. Hummer keep coming and talking to us about these wonderful curriculum maps, that's an opportunity to get more information about what those are and why we're doing it, and I'm looking forward to watching that myself. So that is all I have. No other comments. Then I think that we will now move into an executive session for non-elected personnel under Kansas Open Meeting Acts. I would take a second. I move that we move into it, right?
Second?
Okay, sorry. Motion by Sarah, second by Erica. All in favor? 7-0. We need 20 minutes, and we need Miss Meg.